Yeah, so again, thank you so much for having me to talk about this because I think that in general, um, so first off, I am a person, a human, but then I am a sister and a daughter and a mother. And for my second child, he was born with a rare disease called Phelan-McDermid syndrome. And the thing about when your child is born with a rare disease is that chances are you don't exactly know what's going to happen next. So, in our case, everything seemed perfectly typical and normal that you would expect, except for the fact that he was so like he just moved in slow motion, if I could put it in better words. Um, and Nothing with having a child and going through diagnosis and trying to figure that out it's there is no normalcy to any of it. It's a different story for everybody, and I won't go down in the details of all of that, but I will say that it took years, and when we finally did get our diagnosis, um, I thought we're just going to beat the odds on this one, and he's not like that, and but then one day he was. So like many confusing cognitive based diseases, my son went through a regression. And I use that term really general because um, regression of skills and um, what he went through are very different things. Um, I know that there's a lot of parents out there that will understand the feeling of losing a child who's already there because something severe happens to them and a piece of them um, disappears. And that's kind of what happened in our case. And when that happened, my sweet little cuddly, I used to call him like my koala baby because he was just like always attached to me. He just was so uncomfortable in his skin and he was very confused and he just wasn't he didn't respond to his name. It was a really, really, really hard time. Um, and the thing is that I don't think he knew it was a hard time as much as we all felt that it was a hard time. And that was when he started to bite me. And I didn't react because I knew that he couldn't control it. And I knew that he wasn't doing it on purpose. I knew I wasn't doing anything. But then people started saying things to me because it was getting really bad. And again, I'm not even reacting. He would bite me. Um, and I remember a therapist was like, "Do you want to wash that?" Um, and it was like, it had never occurred to me to stop caring for him to go take care of myself. Um, and many therapists and many social workers and many people saw him bite me and had never said anything other than, oh, maybe you want to give him something to chew on or, things like that, that you're like, no, 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 I don't want that. I don't want him to look disabled. I don't want him to look like that. We can beat this. We can overcome this temporary setback, which is, I think, the instinct of a lot of parents at first when you're not quite sure what's going on.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to make the behaviors worse by feeding into it. And before I knew it, um, I was afraid of him because I couldn't turn my back or I couldn't react fast enough. I definitely didn't want to hurt him. And he was so little and he didn't, he just, he kicked, he punched, he pulled my hair, he did all of these things. And I knew that he was not doing any of it on purpose. I knew he could not control these actions. And I knew that um, I kept saying to myself, sorry, in my head, I would say, pretend like there's a camera recording you and just make sure that you do things that like make you proud. Don't people are going to judge you.
Mm.
So even when I was at home, I didn't, I just took it. Um, and then one day, a social worker came into my house and said to us, because we were joining, this is when we lived in Illinois, and there's something called the PUNS list in Illinois, and you have to get on this list when your child is disabled. And they come to your house and they do an interview just to make sure that your child does qualify and all of this, and they help you process and get on this very long wait list that you're never going to get off probably. And she, he was napping. She didn't see anything, but she kind of turned to me and said, you know, if ever there's a time that your child does something that does hurt you, you should be honest with your doctors.
Mm-hmm.
Always be honest.
Yeah.
Because we don't want you to end up in a situation, or any parent, like it wasn't like she was just talking to me. She's like, we don't want there to be a situation where all of a sudden you say, okay, remember that time that I came in and I said I slipped? Remember that time that I came in and I said I opened the door on my too fast, or I slammed the door, or whatever it is. She's like, you can't go backwards in time and all of a sudden say, that was my child, that was my child, that was my child. And I said, I'm nervous to say something because I don't want them to take him away.
Mm.
I don't want them to think I can't care for him.
Mm.
And and I don't think it was the first time someone said that to her, you know?
Mm. I just want to
And,
first of all commend you for your bravery, because I come across a lot of parents, um, and it takes a lot for a parent to come out and say the truth, you know. And there's so many different reasons why. There's so many different, as you mentioned, like going from that journey of that's your baby, that's your koala baby, to seeing that like something's not right and starting to see things are starting to change, and to being able to accept that and openly, like you said, go out and speak to people about it and have that bravery and be that voice. That takes a certain kind of character. So I just want to, first of all, commend you on that, because it's a certain kind of person that's able to do that and to be that voice and to represent other parents that are experiencing the same in your space.
well, that was the thing. I knew other parents were experiencing um, these things on different levels. There are parents that experience a lot of verbal um, negativity that comes towards them. There are parents that experience physical, um, because maybe their child is having a seizure and you're trying so hard to keep that child safe, and in turn, uh, or an outburst, and we have to do the things that we need to do to keep our child safe. Not because we're scared of the government coming into our house, which does happen. I mean, people call and say, "Oh, that child, they have all these bruises," not looking at us and seeing all
Mm.
the bruises and cuts and teeth marks we have on us. Um, you know, we're just like, what can we do to keep our child safe so that we don't get in trouble? And so when I was at when I kind of realized how bad it was, I was holding my friend's baby, and the baby turned their head too fast, and I just started crying. Um, I never cried when my son hurt me, and I'm gonna say he hurt he hurts me, and I don't cry because it's like this super strength that comes within you that you're like, because I knew that saying ouch wasn't going to do anything. I knew like this is not going to trigger anything for him. But when her baby turned um, their head so fast, I didn't realize like all of the emotions I had inside of me, and so and I don't think anybody realized all the emotions I had inside of me, and that I started to look for help. So I started looking, and all I could find was anonymous people posting anonymous questions, or I did see like this anonymous article, and I thought, okay, well, that's a start. And I turned to my husband and I said, nobody is putting a face, nobody is putting a name, everybody is too scared. And maybe if I do this and I'll help people. And so I did. I posted a blog post about it, and that blog post got a lot of attention and ended up getting picked up and translated into many languages. But when it got translated, my message got
Mm.
mistranslated.
Yeah.
And that like broke my spirit and my heart a little bit and made me not want to share because I'm sharing something super vulnerable to help other people not feel alone. And then to change my words around, one of the languages said that I put him in a facility, and that was not what I did. Like that's not what I do. He lives home with us. Um, and so I felt like if I'm going to share my message, it should be in my own words.
Mm.
And so I had to step back from sharing and I just do it on a local personal level.
Mm.
Um, but when you reached out and said, "Do you want to talk about something?" I was like, you know what? I do want to talk about something um, because I see it every day. I see
Mm.
someone posting. I see someone hiding something.
Mm.
I always joked that like once I had kids, I became invisible.
Mm.
Nobody notices the scars or the disheveled hair or
Mm.
or what, because they don't see you anymore. They see these cute kids.
Mm.
Or in the case of my son now getting older, they're like trying to figure out why does he walk like that, or what is it that they're trying to look at. They're not looking at me, they're looking at him. So um, parents tend to get invisible the older their children get when it comes to disabilities, and um, but the consequences of the actions that are happening in our homes sometimes get bigger and supports get less.
Mm. Yeah, that is definitely, I think there's so many pieces in what you just said that, first of all, what you mentioned reminded me of a parent I spoke to a little while ago, and her child had ADHD, and she, same time going through a divorce, and she was just kind of dealing with these tantrums outside, and she was like, this was her first time being comfortable enough to say something. And it just brings back that point of what you mentioned about invisible parents and about people seeing the parent and seeing that they are also a person that also has needs, and also while they're trying to balance their child, trying to get their child's behavior, trying to do all these different juggling acts. So what would you say to those parents that feel invisible?
Well, I would say you're probably make trying to make yourself invisible. I know
Mm.
I was. Um, I didn't want to be a parent of a disabled child, period. I didn't want that identity. Which is ironic because I am very leaned into it at this point. Um, I didn't want to ask for help because I didn't think that there was any help. And I didn't want to ask for help because I was afraid somebody else would get hurt.
Mm.
Um, so, in many cases, let's say we do ask for help and we get it, and people are like, no, 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 no. This is too big. This is, and now you asked for help and you got rejected, and rejection doesn't feel good either. Um, I think that the rest of the world who doesn't have to live this kind of situation um, thinks that we are parents and these are our children and we need to figure it out. And but we didn't go to school for this. We don't get classes on this. Nobody has ever offered me any training on how to handle these situations. I nobody even therapy, they're like, everybody has quick to say go see a therapist. Good luck finding a therapist that understands how to live in a situation like this that you cannot actually quote unquote escape. Like
Mm,
if someone was with a partner and that partner was physically or verbally abusing them,
mm,
we would help that person leave that situation.
mm,
But for parents, it is expected, this parental responsibility, and many of us take that very seriously. We do not want to let the rest of our family down. We don't want to, like, we want, like, people just expect that we will help our children thrive at all costs, and but they don't want to know what those costs are. So I would say finding other people, like, I'm very lucky that I have a larger rare disease.
mm,
Um, and I can talk to other families, and I know that they don't all exactly understand my situation, but they can empathize with my situation. Um, or they're just happy that I am able to voice. So I think finding someone else to make you not feel alone. If that is a therapist, amazing. If
mm,
that is a life coach, great. If that is a social worker, amazing. I think doing it all by yourself, it could be a respite worker. It could be just someone that says, I see you. I want to help. What can I do to help?
mm.
Um, or just being like, I need help. I need help.
Yeah,
Something
yeah.
that is very hard for many um, parents to ask,
Mm,
because we're afraid sometimes that, um, like, that we're, if we're not showing how much we're appreciative of what we have, it's not, it doesn't, um, society will think we just are being greedy when we're just trying to, like, I always say I am running a marathon. Like, I'm running this marathon with him, and I don't know where I am in this run.
yeah.
No, there are no mile markers. Along the way, I've been super lucky to have some people be like tagging in along the way, but they'll all come and go. I run the whole entire race
Mm,
if I'm lucky, right?
yeah.
Um, so like if we're, and I have no idea where it ends.
Mm,
I don't know when to conserve energy and when to expel energy. Like,
mm.
we would just never have someone run forever and say, just keep running and not give them any water, any food. You know what I mean? But with these situations, if none of your doctors know, your child's doctors, your doctors, then you definitely can't get the supports
Mm.
you need along the way, because um, nobody even knows to offer you any, or
I love that. And it reminds me of a conversation I was having yesterday with someone that mentioned, especially within like the Black Afro Caribbean slash just the general Black community, it's such a stigma. It's such a stigma. Like no parent is, first of all, getting the diagnosis is a challenge, and then after they get the diagnosis, it's everything that you mentioned. It's all of that, all of the emotions, all of the I'm not sure, all of the what are people going to think, all of that, and I feel like the more people do things like what you're doing, being that voice and coming out and saying and being and having that confidence to speak to your doctor, to tell people, to say, hey, like, can you help us over here? Can you, is there something that you can do? Like, is reaching out. And I understand, like, it is, again, like you mentioned, some of it is stigma, some of it is, I got rejected from there before. So how many times do I have to keep trying before someone's going to
right,
listen, you know? Um, and you shouldn't have to knock on 10,000 doors before someone listens. You shouldn't have to. Like,
right. Um, you bring up a really good point too, because like I live in an area where there's a lot of cultural diversity
mm,
and lack of resources based on stigmas
mm,
and also um, this idea of good children and bad children
Mm.
from parenting
Yeah.
styles. Um, it's infuriating because I know some amazing, amazing parents
Mm.
that has nothing to do with your child is, you know, having complications inside their own body that have nothing to do with the outside factors of these amazing parents.
Mm.
But we in society are like judgmental. Oh, I can't believe they went out to dinner and let that child sit on their iPad the whole time. Good for them for going out to dinner.
Yeah.
Good for them.
I don't know what they had to do to get to that point. Yeah.
Right, because I'm stuck at my house
Mm.
because my son can't stop moving and must touch everything and must grab everyone. And, a lot of people don't love that.
Mm.
And there's a point where when they're really little, it's super cute. And as they get larger and larger and larger, um, it just it makes it more difficult to just fit in the norms within society. And so, um, and when you have a child who I can give a great example. We were at the zoo one time and I see this grown man on the ground not wanting to get up.
Mm.
And I knew, right, like there's something happening here that's outside of I could tell that was mom's control. Good for mom for trying to go to the zoo.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, most of the people at the zoo with their young children are looking and going, that's inappropriate, or you can see the judgment. Like you can see that, she's afraid to touch her son to help him
Mm.
get up because he's resisting.
Mm.
She knows that this could go very bad.
Mm.
And I kind of just like looked at her and gave her like that knowing
Yeah.
nod, like, you're doing okay, mom.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she doesn't want to make eye contact with
Yeah.
anybody. She doesn't want anybody to like get involved, and she just wants to be peacefully planted in the middle of this
Mm.
walkway. Of course, she's like, why here? Like, you could feel all her emotions. Um, and I just thought to myself, like, this is my future.
Mm.
If I go out in the world, I will always be judged once he becomes a certain size, and I can't just pick him up and grab him and walk. Like, that's my son now. We go for a walk in our community, and he wants to go left, but we need to go right. I have to turn him around, and I have to figure out a way to do it without someone thinking she's hurting him.
Yeah. I love what you mentioned because it reminds me of a situation that was just last week. Last week, I was in the grocery shop, and this woman had her autistic son in the shopping cart, and I mean, I could obviously tell that he had autism because children, nonverbal children with autism, they make certain sounds depending on, some of them are echolalic, some of them just when they need something, want something, they verbalize that through the sounds that they make. And you could tell on her face that she felt uncomfortable, like the way she was looking around. And I was like, I went to speak to her. I was just like, hey, and I spoke to her son, and I was just wanted to do what I could to make her feel comfortable. And I was like, more people need to have your kind of confidence to bring your child out in the shopping center. She was like, he hates Walmart, but he's doing well here. And I was like, celebrate yourself for that. Because that, getting out of the house, getting into the shopping cart, pushing the shopping cart, and just being okay regardless of all this, because there were people that were looking, and and I feel like that's what made me feel like, let me just go and have a conversation. But I feel like that's how awareness happens. People don't know what anything is unless they're exposed to it, and only exposed to it if you expose them to it. So if it's
Right.
continuously hidden, then it's going to be continuously a surprise when people see it.
Right. But if there are not the supports to be able to go out in the community,
Yes.
then it makes it really difficult, like especially
Yes.
when you have a child who doesn't necessarily know how to control their body and
Mm,
control their movements. And even if you do have one that does, but they're unpredictable.
mm,
And because society turns around and goes, what did you do for that to happen?
mm,
So, and it is not always what we did. Sometimes it's what we didn't, it's what didn't happen,
mm,
or some completely unexpected environmental um, or internal within
mm.
our children. So it's so
Yes.
unpredictable to go out in the community. It is much easier to stay home, and that is the irony of all of this: is that
Yeah.
then not getting the supports you need in your home. I really stress back to the um, fact that like we are not like I didn't check off a little box when I was pregnant that said um, like I am prepared to be the child of a disabled parent. It never or a disabled child. Like I never like you don't even think that that's an op like you don't think this is
Mm,
going to happen. Um, and then on top of it, it kind of just happens so slowly and quickly at the same time, depending on your situation. But for many of us, it's so confusing that you're just focused so much on the child
mm,
and that nobody's focused on how it takes years before they start focusing on behaviors in the home
mm,
for most children. And but even after that, you can train a parent, but we are the safe place.
mhm,
We are the most like when you like I always remember the stories of like people being like I was strong, I was stoic, and then I saw my mom walk in and I just burst into tears.
mm,
So I am usually the last person my son will do something for,
mm,
but I'm the first person he runs to.
mm,
So when he was um, like when he's at his times of being physically um, uncomfortable and confused with his body, and it the impact is mostly on me
mm,
because I am that person that makes him feel safe enough to be able to be uncomfortable. And it's it's a very confusing place to be in as a parent and as a human
mm,
um, because it hurts physically and mentally
mm,
to go do this every day and not know what's going to happen when my son comes home in a couple hours.
mm,
Um, and at times when I say like I have this help and I have this help and I have this help and people are like, oh, you have so much help, and I'm like, yes, and I am so grateful that I have this help now.
mm,
But I know as he gets older that will be more difficult, and that there are other people that have no help,
mm,
no help because there is nothing available in their area,
mm,
or because they have trust issues,
mm,
which I do as well. Because our children can't tell us what is going on. My
mm,
son is nonverbal; he cannot tell me. Um, and even if something bad happened, I don't think he would recognize it.
mm,
So the irony is here you are investing so much energy, love, and attention into someone that hurts you
mm,
as a parent. Um, and you always want to do the best for this person. And society doesn't give us the supports that we need to do that. But
mm,
then they say, but then we have this pressure that, like, if our child goes to school with a bruise or a cut or a scrape, they're going to think I'm a bad parent.
mm,
If my kid doesn't look dressed to the nines, they're going to think I'm a bad parent. If I forget his water bottle, they're going to think I'm a bad parent,
mm.
not knowing
Oh my
all of the
gosh, yes.
hecticness that you went through to get
Yeah.
that child to where they needed to be. Um, yeah, I wish that I could help every single parent feel empowered to get the supports and help that they need in their area.
I love that. And like so many gems. You just have so much knowledge. but I think something that stuck with me was who's paying attention to parents? It goes back to that invisible parent thing.
Yeah,
And how much is society giving to the parents? Because something needs to happen. Because like you said, it's so unpredictable. I mean, I've had experience of different children with different needs, but each of them are so unique and so unpredictable. And anything in their environment can sometimes cause a crisis for a child. And you can just be anywhere and anything can happen.
right.
Um, and then again, who's looking after the parent? Because why should they have to feel like, oh, like, because then it is that crisis point of, oh, okay, now, so what do I do now? And there's people like around, but like, are they looking at me? Are they judging me? What's like, there's so much to it. Um,
There's so much judgment, period, of parents when it comes to these things. Like, just like the instinctual thought comes to me of like when a parent has to leave,
mm,
like they can't deal with it. It could be a diagnosis, it could be years later, it could be whatever. If marriage is split up, more
mm,
there. I mean, the divorce rate in families with disability is so much higher because
mm,
um, I met a woman who flat out said, "I love my husband, I love
mm,
him, but I need a break 50% of the time, or I would not I legitimately need a break from. It's the only way I know I'll be able to do it." And that was like heartbreaking for me.
mm,
Um, and then I am this uh, advocate and voice and all of the things, and and my husband's like so smart and thoughtful, but he is at a different place than me. This is difficult for him. This is a different kind of difficult. Um, and there are some families that are like, this is, you know, it's in God's hands, and they just go through it in that, and that works for them. And every family is different. Not every family has that support, and some families have or that faith and belief. And I just feel like whatever families need or do is to get through is great, but and people in general, because the mental aspect of you're handed a genetic diagnosis, or you're, and then the next diagnosis and the next diagnosis, and never being like, let's do a check-in with the parents in 30 days to see how they are adapting to this next change that has just happened. Like, mental health is not a priority at all in this country, especially for caregivers. Um, this is not what I signed up for. I'm extremely like bold to say that I wasn't even sure I wanted to be a parent, and then now I'm in a situation where I definitely didn't want to be, and I know that other parents thrive and other parents can't.
mm. Yeah, that is that I think that is the reality of the situation. And it is, I think there's so many different strategies that work for different people. Like you mentioned, every
Right.
family is different. And some families are lucky enough to have two parents in the household. Some families only have one. Some families are going through that divorce. Um, and I think even in that, that adds another layer to the whole situation. Um, I feel like I could sit and talk to you forever.
I know. I'm so sorry. I know. I feel like I
No,
go on and on and
do not
on.
apologize because I think because you have a certain level of bravery that a lot of a lot of parents don't feel comfortable with
Mm,
coming out and saying this is challenging, coming out and saying a lot of parents feel invisible. Society is not paying attention. Like it's not everyone has that confidence to come out and say that. Although it's very evident. Like it's evident that these are the challenges. It's evident that these things are
right.
happening.
But you know what? I think it's that I'm not saying it for myself, I'm saying it for other people. Like,
Yes.
I'm able to use my own experience to know this is happening, but I didn't know this was happening 10 years ago.
Mm,
I never, I wouldn't have known until I started living it.
mm,
And so I was like, you know what? More people need to know. Like,
yes.
I'm going to start sharing with people because I have always cared about the world,
Mm,
but I learned when I went off to college that I had no idea what was really happening in the world.
mm,
And and when your world is this small and then it gets like a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize these problems even existed.
yeah.
And how many people who don't have someone disabled in their family are going to know another disabled, like are going to know more and more and more disabled people because, like you said, a lot of us are more comfortable at home
Mm,
because the community is so uninvited is and uninviting because we're getting looks and um, we're not getting the same level of access, even though we should.
mm,
And I say we because when I am with my son, we are always a unit. And and when I'm not with my son, I'm always paying attention to, Kitty, come here.
mm,
Because you don't realize how many places people can't go
mm.
until you have to start thinking about how am I going to get my person here. So I hope that this um I mean, this is scary for me. I'm not brave, I'm bold. but this is scary for me because I'm worried that this will be negative attention, but I've always been told throughout the years that I was able to put things in words that someone wasn't able to say themselves. And I'm
Mm,
hoping that this helps someone else to be like, hey, just watch this,
mm,
just to get kind of an idea of where I'm coming from,
mm.
um, or watch this because maybe it will help create an idea for a program or a new I love brainstorming ideas. I love coming up with new things. And I love that you gave us this platform to be a little bit more bold today.
No, I love that. And I think your story just reminded me of a story of a parent that I went to see. She had two kids that had autism. And she, again, like you said, she was in the house. She hadn't left the house. She never leaves the house because she has two kids with autism. And even leaving the house for 1 hour, she was like, oh my gosh. But I can, no one, unless you go and you find that parent and you go and say, hi, are you okay? Like, what's happening in your house? No one knows that it's a challenge. I just want to say thank you to you for being you. And we have to have another conversation because your voice is so authentic, it's so genuine, it's so real. And it's the voice of so many parents, it's the real experience of what so many people are experiencing. So I just want to say
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you. Thank you. Anytime.
Love it.